Deion Sanders and Colorado secured their first win of the 2024 season, but Coach Prime said it felt like a loss.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Borber. Today's episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by Ultimate GM. Ultimate College Football Head Coach is a brand new mobile game that is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Begin your coaching legacy today. We are also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcast. Joining me today, Scott Proctor, Coloradoans' finest over there in the lovely state of Colorado. Scott, they had an eventful week one game. We talked off the air, and we both kind of agreed it was closer than we expected, especially at the end. I think when we did our predictions last week, it was like we knew it was going to be close throughout, but we expected Colorado to sort of beat them down and eventually go up by, say, 14 to 20 or whatever the number was, right? And that didn't happen. And then Coach Prime talks to the media after the game, and then he talks to the team after the game in the locker room and says, have you ever felt like you scored more points, but you lost? Because that's what this feels like. What does that quote say to you?
I mean, I think it tells me that he has obviously really high expectations for this team and the talent on this roster. And what we all saw, the 5.6 million viewers who tuned in to ESPN to watch Colorado and NDSU on Thursday night. What we saw doesn't necessarily match up to, what they should be, at their best, to say the least. I definitely feel Coach Prime on that. I mean, like I said, I think I predicted on this show probably about a 3-score game in favor of CU. Obviously, it was a 2-score game in fairness, really, for a large chunk of that fourth quarter. That's what Cam Miller ran for a 20-yard touchdown with about 2 minutes and 19 seconds left. Obviously, turned it into the 1-score 5-point final that everybody sees and is talking about. But when your expectation is to dominate, and you don't necessarily dominate, at least for large stretches of the game, for the majority of the game, against a relatively inferior opponent when it comes to overall talent, although NDSU played their tails off, man. A well-coached football team who came out with an excellent game plan to start the game, mixing in the run, the play action, and obviously the pass as well. Cam Miller's ability to be a true dual-threat quarterback, make plays, get chunk gains with his arm, obviously, as well as his legs, really impressed me. And I think he thought the CU defense off guard to begin the game, to be honest, especially when you lose your veteran safety, your veteran leader in the secondary, and Cameron Stillman Craig. Pretty much the first drive of the game, he gets popped, making a tackle, tried to come back in, and then for really the rest of that game, it was Savion Riley out there at safety next to Shiloh Sanders, the Vanderbilt transfer, who didn't expect to play as much as he did on Thursday night. I tell you that much. So it was impressive to kind of see him, step in, kind of shake some of the rust off early on, but get comfortable in there and really look solid, which is part of the reason we'll probably get into it. But the defensive performance in the second half by Colorado, I think, was a story of the game, which is crazy considering how impressive and electric Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter and Jimmy Horn were. But we'll get into that. But second half performance by the defense definitely stood out to me.
Yeah, I think there's two ways you could go about this and it feeling like a loss, right? I think the one you mentioned already is, regardless of what the spread is, regardless of how good North Dakota State is as a program, I think Deion Sanders genuinely went into that game hoping to win by two or 3 scores, right? And like you said, it was close at the end, but even if they had won by 2 scores, it wouldn't have been a convincing 2 scores. You know what I mean? Like, they were up by 2 scores in the fourth quarter, and the defense had really ramped it up. But the whole first half, North Dakota State dominated the time of possession. I think you posted it. I don't remember the exact numbers, but I want to say it was like 15 and some change to like 5 and some change, right? Does that sound?
Yeah. Colorado finished the first half with about 8 and some change minutes of time of possession, which is just crazy. And I think in the second half, they had a drive that totaled that exact time. Let me check here. In the second half, they had a drive, their last touchdown drive, 17 plays, 80 yards, 8 minutes and 10 seconds. They had about 8 minutes of time possession in the first half alone. So they pretty much topped that in one drive in the second half. So that was pretty great.
Yeah, they definitely wanted to dominate the possession or dominate time of possession. But for Colorado, they knew that going in, right? And so when you look at that first half, you kind of had like this North Dakota State was controlling the tempo of the game. They were controlling everything, right? It was the ball was in their hands at all times. So when you look at Colorado, it's like we couldn't get them off the field on third down. There was an interesting play call on 4th and 1. I don't mind going for it. I just don't know how I feel about running it out of the clock. Like throw in Walter Taylor, throw in Destin Wade, slap them under center and say, hey, give us a little QB power here or whatever it may be. Like, I think that's a way to help out the run game for Colorado because that wasn't it wasn't as useful as I think we thought it would be. I thought we would get more out of Dallin Hayden. I thought we'd get more out of Charlie Offerdahl getting the start, and there just wasn't a lot there. And so I think for Colorado, outside of Shedeur Sanders and the two receivers, Jimmy Hill and Travis Hunter, and the second half defense performance, it was kind of like, like I just was expecting more. It's hard to really put that into perspective, but North Dakota State controlled the game for the first half, and then Colorado kind of shot themselves in the foot throughout, whether it was the play calling, checking down or checking to a pass play, unnecessary penalties that gave North Dakota State a touchdown pretty much, and then even that last drive. Thank God Mark Fassett has one of the biggest legs in college football because if it was about 10 yards shorter, that Hail Mary's going into the end zone, right?
It's true. Yeah, I mean, you can look at all these things and kind of be disappointed and walk away feeling like you lost. Even when you won, to use the words of Coach Prime. But I think a lot of people out there have to remember that this is not your typical FCS football program.
That's true.
This is a really good quality opponent. Like North Dakota State is going to win double-digit games this year at season's end. So this is not going to be a game when we look back later in the year and we're like, wow, that was a disappointing loss.
Right.
When you have a win over a 10, 11, 12 win team, albeit an FCS opponent, and also too, obviously, yes, there are things to work on, but as you watch football this weekend, week 1 of college football season, you see a lot of favorites struggling against underdogs, on the home or on the road or at home, and that's just the nature of week 1 when you're playing against unfamiliar opponents like Colorado and NDSU were. And that's something I wrote about, something I talked about as well, how big halftime adjustments would be in that game, because this is a matchup of two teams who have literally never played each other in the history of football on a football field. So there was going to be a filling out period. And to NDSU's coaches' credit in their players' execution early on, they came out and executed a really good game plan. But to Colorado's credit and to their coaching staff's credit, they won the halftime adjustment period. Right. To shut out NDSU's offense for the entire third quarter and pretty much the entire fourth quarter, pretty much the entire second half before Cam Miller's late rushing touchdown with 2 minutes and 19 seconds left. To shut them out in that period after a really ugly first half where you allowed 20 points and allowed that NDSU offense to do pretty much whatever it wanted to on the ground or in the air, that was impressive to me. That's something to work on. And obviously, we're going to see just how well those adjustments go from week 1 to week 2 this weekend against a really talented quarterback, albeit a really young quarterback. So that's going to be fascinating to see how defensive coordinator Robert Livingston kind of game plans this. And we'll see if he was just playing a really vanilla defense and the plan of, saving some stuff to where Dylan Raiola has just never seen it before.
Yeah, I think that's a good point there. And I want to hit on a couple of things before we move on. I think for some reason, this felt like the ugliest week 1 of college football I've ever seen. Oregon was taken down to the wire by Idaho, who preseason rankings, Idaho was projected 3rd in the Big Sky. And they're taking down they almost took down, excuse me. I don't want Oregon fans to get all mad, but fourth quarter, they had a chance to win that game pretty much. And they went into that game as nearly 50-point underdogs. Some sports books didn't even have a line for Idaho to win the game. That's how big of a sort of an upset it would have been. And so,
guess what? After the game, Dan Lanning, Oregon head coach, wasn't too thrilled, although his team got a W.
Right.
Different than Coach Prime.
Yeah, it happens. And then other games around the country, there's just I saw interceptions off the back of the center's head. Like, it was just like a weird, wacky week 1 of college football, and that's just how it goes. And the vanilla thing on defense, I see a lot of people commenting that.
I just want to add one more thing into
go ahead.
weird, wacky weekend of college football. Thursday's game had maybe one of the oddest turnovers I've ever seen in my entire life. That interception that Shedeur threw, I mean, he only threw 3 all of last season. So obviously it's a rare occurrence, but that was an even rare, most believable turnover. That ball getting flipped up into the air off somebody's calf, or somebody's thigh, their leg or whatever.
A person on the ground too.
A person on the ground facing the other way. I mean, that was just so unbelievable. And again, that was in the red zone. If that interception ends in, let's just say 3, not even a touchdown. I think it's a different game, and people aren't obviously talking about that. But
that's true.
Those little things that just happen.
It was very dodgeball and PE-esque, where it's like you throw it at someone and bounces off someone, they catch it, they're out. The vanilla thing on defense is interesting to me because I don't feel like Colorado brought enough, or I mean, hindsight's 2020, but I feel like they could have brought more pressure on Cam Miller. I think he hurt them the most when they're just going straight up man, and he would wait a little bit and take off. And I think he was their best running weapon for North Dakota State. And so it's interesting you mentioned the pressure, and we'll see if they kind of ramp it up against Dylan Raiola to sort of give him looks that they didn't show. Because I think, like you said, they were pretty straight up this whole game. Like, I don't think I saw one play or any drive where they got like really aggressive. I think they were just like counting on their guys to make plays. So we'll see how that changes next week. When we come back, we're going to get positive. We're going to talk about all the things that Colorado did right and what they need to carry on over to week 2. This episode of Locked on Buffs is brought to you by Ultimate College Football Head Coach. Hey, Locked on Buffs fans, I want to take a moment to give you a heads up on a brand new mobile game that I think you're going to love as much as I do, and that's Ultimate College Football Head Coach. In this amazing game and simulation, you could step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your college football program to glory. Can you imagine actually being the coach of the Colorado Buffaloes? From recruiting players, hiring coaching staff, to overseeing training camps and handling school scholarships, you control every crucial aspect of their program. It's all in your hands. Will you be able to handle the pressure? And here's what I really love about the game. You are responsible for calling the offensive plays during the game. So you could go vanilla or you could get aggressive. You do whatever you want to do. Your strategy will not only determine the success of your football season, but will shape the future and legacy of your program. Ultimate College Football Head Coach is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline. You can play on the go as you want and when you want to. And of course, we have a special Locked On Buffs offer for you fans. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store. Receive a free boost to your program. Make sure to take advantage of this perk, as it will get your team off to a strong start. To download, just visit ultimate-cfb.com or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate College Football Head Coach. Begin your coaching legacy today. Welcome back to Locked on Buffs. That was quite a mouthful there, but we're talking about the positives, Scott. We are talking about the positives. We got a little negative at first, not really, just what we wanted to work on, what we wanted to see be improved. Let's start with what we saw from this Colorado team that was A, better than what you thought it would be, or B, just exceeded expectations.
Yeah, I mean, offensively, man, you couldn't really ask for a better opener. I mean, Deion Sanders, if you watch that game on Thursday night and don't come away, if you didn't already think it, with the idea that Deion Sanders is the best quarterback in college football, I'm not really sure what you were watching, especially after you watch some of the quarterback performances of the other top guys in college football, this weekend. I mean, he was just so surgical. It somehow seems that he got even better from last year, which is pretty crazy to think about. And the same can be said for Travis Hunter. He somehow looks even faster. That was my first time.
The first touchdown.
Yeah, exactly. His first touch of this season goes for a 41-yard touchdown off of 5-yard pitch route. I mean, making his corner miss. You're never going to be first person to try to tackle Travis Hunter is never going to succeed. It's going to take a group, but to make that first defender miss his corner and then to just eliminate the safety's pursuit angle with just blazing speed is just a window into the talent, the show that is Travis Hunter. I mean, he played 55 snaps on offense, 69 snaps on defense, only came off the field for 2 snaps all game. One of them was when his helmet came off, so he had to come off the field. So just speaks to his unreal conditioning. and just the talent, the rapport, the chemistry that Shador and Travis have together is really unreal. It's second to none in my opinion. Maybe if you want to go with no Fafita, T-Mac, that quarterback receiver
that's
duo
probably
out in
#1.
Arizona. That is probably what it was. I mean, I said it before the season. I think T-Mac is the best receiver in college football. I mean, the slight edge over Travis Hunter, Luther Bird, and some other guys. But it was special watching their connection.
Yeah, they've been doing it. So fun little story. One of my friends' family. This is like a weird little connection. His uncle is the principal of a school in LA. Those two kids have been playing football since 8th grade together, and it shows.
Crazy.
They dominated in 8th grade, they dominated in high school, and now they're dominating the college ranks. And Shador Sanders and Travis Hunter, not a bad duo either.
Seriously.
Like you mentioned the angle for the safety. Like theoretically, the safety had like a 30-yard advantage in terms of like, hey, you just run straight this way, and you will
keep him in front of you.
You will run into him basically.
Yeah.
And like Travis Hunter just zoomed right by him. Like I didn't think it was going to go for a touchdown. I thought it was going to be a big game, but I didn't think it was going to be a touchdown. So that was a crazy play. I also wanted to give, this is the biggest positive for me. Obviously, it's North Dakota State. Really good team. Are they a Power 5 or Power 4, defense line? No, but they're still a really good defense, and they still are known for their defense. The offensive line only gave up 1 sack. Realistically, it was Shador Sanders' fault. I think he ran right into it. Because on PFF, nobody was credited with the sack. So I think they kind of put on Shador at that point. But outside of, I think it was the interior was a little, Hank Zelinka specifically was the one that I would say struggled the most. But even then, he didn't give up too many pressures. Like it was a very different offensive line for Colorado. Like Shador Sanders had time. He had time to work up in the pocket rather than scrambling about 15 yards back. He only had to do that a couple times. And so the offensive line deserves a lot of credit for their pass blocking. Run offense wise, I would like to see a little more physicality, a little more of a push because Colorado's running backs, I think they averaged, it was like 1.4 yards before contact, which isn't great necessarily. You kind of want to get past the line of scrimmage before you're getting touched. But the offensive line was really positive for me. And then you touched on the second half defense earlier. Let's dive into that. So I'll bring up the scoreboard right now, or the score right now. At halftime, North Dakota State's leading 20-17. So they scored 20 points in the first half. Obviously, they only scored 6 in the second, and it was kind of one of those drives where I think Colorado's defense was just trying to. They didn't seem as aggressive as they were the entire half, and Coach Prime called that play idiotic. So he was obviously not thrilled with the touchdown play. Talk to me about the second half defense, though, because it was night and day different.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, after NDSU scored a field goal or touchdown on their first 4 drives of the game, following that, NDSU went punt, punt, punt with no drive in that sequence going more than 39 yards. Obviously, that's coming before the late touchdown with 2 minutes and 19 seconds left. So there was whatever was said at halftime about Robert Livingston, Coach Prime, and that defensive staff. I mean, it worked. I mean, they kicked up the pressure. It appeared. Those guys on the edge, those guys up front. Shkozmi Nwankwo had a huge game. Got the first sack of the season for the Buffs here. He was big both in the run game, in the pass game. He proved why I was so high on him, why I thought he would be such a huge addition to this defense up front. Deion Hayes played really well, a really good game off the edge. He actually made, one of a few plays in the quarterback run game, getting Cam Miller down for, a short gain or even one for a loss. So that was impressive. To me, that was just a difference up front. There was a different team that emerged from locker room after halftime up front on the Buffs defensive line. I mean, I still like to see more of Nakai Hill-Green at linebacker. Obviously, Trevor Woods, Levante Bentley got the start, and Bent actually played really good. I want to say he damn near led the team in tackles. Him and Shiloh or Trevor, one of those guys, but it was
not
Trevor.
Not the showing from Trevor Woods we were hoping for, huh? Just
still led the team in total tackles, which is crazy.
Right.
Trevor did with 10, but yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people I saw on Twitter were talking about, just him maybe getting lost in space, in some of those pass plays. But again, I think that could have something to do with the defensive scheme that was, being called on a given play. But
Yeah.
Again, the secondary was fine, even with a backup in Savion Riley, without Cameron and Craig in there. Again, when you're playing a lot of man coverage, there still weren't any big plays over the top, over the defense's head. So you like to see that. But again, to me, the biggest thing for that second half defensive performance was the guys up front, and that's what we wanted to see, right? That was the biggest, con of this defense, in my opinion, last year up front. The inability to stop the run, the inability to get after the quarterback. This defense put both of those things on display in the second half, and that was encouraging to see.
Yeah, I think the pass rush, it didn't result in a lot of sacks, but it was much more effective in the second half than it was in the first half.
No doubt.
I said this on my live show after the game. That game, the way it started, to me, and you could agree or disagree with me, Scott, but I feel like that's a game that Colorado maybe loses last year, like that team specifically. I just feel like North Dakota State kind of punched them in the mouth, because second half adjustments were not really always great last year, and the way North Dakota State just came out wasn't rattled. That was a game where if Colorado didn't lose, it would have been really, really close, like probably even closer than it was.
I have to agree.
Yeah, it just felt like North Dakota State came out ready, and I like to see the adjustments. I like to see the resiliency from that Colorado squad. When we come back, we are going to be talking about next week, or this week, I guess, week 2, Nebraska. It's going to be a big game. There's going to be a lot of people in attendance, and Colorado has a real chance to make another statement. But first, quick break. This episode of Locked on Buffs is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Are you tired after lunch? Well, guess what? You're not alone. In fact, research shows that more than 70% of us hit a wall after lunch. Let a 5 Hour Energy shot help you leap over that wall instead of crashing into it. With zero sugar and a convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. So, if you want to get the perfect pick-me-up, go to 5hourenergy.com. Again, that's the number 5, hourenergy.com, and get 5 Hour Energy product today. You can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, to receive 20% off your order. The offer is only valid until September 30th on one or more order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. Welcome back to Locked on Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. We are here with Scott Proctor, and we are talking about Nebraska. I don't want to say I was surprised by Dylan Raiola's performance, but I think he just kind of proved why he was at one point the number 1 recruit in the country. He absolutely torched a UTEP defense, which, I mean, take it with a grain of salt. UTEP is probably going to, unless they have a miraculous turnaround, I think they will be one of the more, we'll call it work in progress teams in the country. I think that's a nice way of putting it. So he torched them. Nebraska ended up winning 40-7. He finished 19-27 for 238 yards, 2 scores. Nebraska's run game got heavily involved. They ran the ball 47 times for 223 yards. And then Texas transfer Isaiah Nayor at wide receiver really lit it up with 6 catches for 121 yards, 20 yards per catch. Then they had another receiver named Jamal Banks with 4 catches for a score. Just to put in perspective how different this offense is. Last year, Nebraska's leading passer had like 970 yards on the year. Dylan Royale's at 238, so he's pretty much a third of the way there. Last year, Nebraska's leading receiver did not surpass 400 yards. Isaiah Nayor, a couple more games, and he will be probably at 400 yards if all things go right. So very, very different offense. So, Scott, first of all, give me the keys to winning for Nebraska, or not for Nebraska, for Colorado, for beating Nebraska.
Yeah, for me, priority number 1 is confusing Dylan Raiola at the line of scrimmage. Giving him different looks, not allowing him to trust and believe in what he's seeing pre-snap and obviously post-snap as well. I mean, you want to be able to confuse this guy. He's obviously a gunslinger. That's just how he is. That's how he plays.
He's Mahomesy. That's what the people are saying.
Very much so. And I've been writing and talking about Dylan Raiola, since he was a high school football prospect, the number 1 quarterback, in the nation back when he was actually playing football in Chandler, Arizona, before he even transferred high school. It was to finish out his high school career down in Georgia, down there in Buford. So I'm real familiar with his game and his talent. I mean, just an electric arm talent. This guy can throw the football anywhere with touch, with accuracy. And he's going to present, even in his second career college football start, he's going to present a real legitimate challenge to this Colorado secondary in ways that it just wasn't challenged, last week by NDSU's, run first, run heavy, style. So again, priority number one for Robert Livingston, for this defensive coaching staff, is to be able to give the illusion of different looks to confuse Dylan Raiola so that he doesn't trust his eyes, so that he can't throw the ball with confidence. Because when he's throwing it, ripping it with confidence, he can throw it with just about anybody in college football. And that's not what CU wants to see. On the other side of the ball, keys, I think it's going to be to establish a run game. I think it was good to see that Dallin Hayden, the Ohio State running back transfer, finished the game with the most carries with 9. Obviously, he didn't have a lot of running room. Neither did Charlie Alfredall, who started the game. But that has to be improved just a bit, more than a bit here this weekend, particularly when you're on the road, particularly when you are playing in front of a raucous crowd in a rivalry game. 3 and outs are going to hurt you. They're going to do more damage than your typical, 3 and out at home, when you got a punt against NDSU. A couple 3 and outs in a row where you go incompletion, 1 yard gain, incompletion, that crowd is going to feed off of that. So you got to try to avoid that as much as you can. Feature Dallin Hayden in the run game and see what he can give you, to complement obviously the passing game, because Shador is going to bring his game. Those receivers are going to bring their game. I think Nebraska would be making a mistake if they, try to focus in on stopping Jimmy Horton Jr., because that's going to open things up for LaJohntay Wester, who had a relatively quiet game. It's going to open things up for Will Shepherd, who had a relatively quiet game. We know Travis Hunter is going to do his thing. So, again, 2 keys: defensively, confuse Dylan Raiola; offensively, establish a running game led by Dallin Hayden.
Yeah, I like the run game one specifically because I think, and they did this last year too, they gave up on the run way too quickly. I think it felt like by maybe late in the second quarter, early third quarter, they had kind of moved on from it. They gave us a Draylon Miller little touch at the beginning of the game.
And I love it.
I loved it.
They got the young guy involved. 2 catches, I think, 2 rushing attempts as well. And obviously this was something that was floated by RK on the NVR pod that I was on last week. Maybe some wildcat, with Draylon back there, especially with your lack of a power running game. And those 3rd and 1, those 4th and 1 that you went for and missed last week. Maybe you insert, Draylon Miller, a powerful runner. You can really truly play 11-on-11 football like NDSU does with their, running quarterback, their power quarterback running game. So that's a wrinkle that I think should be added, assuming, true freshman Michael Welch isn't already that answer, as a short yardage kind of goal line back. It's somebody who Coach Bryant, after last Thursday's game, mentioned that he wanted to get into the game, had planned to get into the game before NDSU scored that late touchdown. And he said that Michael Welch would have closed that game with how physical, as physical as how he runs. So maybe that's an answer, but got to be something figured out in these when you got to have it run situations.
Yeah, because realistically, you look at they finished the game, and this is including Shador Sanders' stats, which running wise, it's not like he did anything special, but 23 carries, 59 yards, 2.6 yards per carry. Longest run of the game by a running back, 6 yards. Longest run of the game overall, 11 yards, Shador Sanders. So they got to do something different. Whether it's, I personally think they need to use Draylon Miller like a Deebo Samuel type, get him in some jet sweep stuff. We all see it on EA Sports College Football 25. Give him a little jet sweep action or a little pitch here and there. Or Walter Taylor, Destin Wade. Don't know how big they're going to be in the offense at all this year, but if either one of them is able to sort of contribute in the run game, maybe that's something to look into. North Dakota State did it a little bit. They would bring in a backup quarterback who is strictly there to run the ball. He did throw the ball a couple times, which I think caught Colorado off guard, but luckily it didn't lead to anything crazy. So I think they need more from the run game. Defensively, get pressure on Dylan Raiola, and not just pressure him. You have to bring him down, right? He's Mahomesy, so he will throw a sidearm between the legs or whatever. No 360, whatever it may be. Like that's what he does. He is someone who thrives off of the unordinary. He thrives off of finding looks or throws that aren't there to the human eye. So that's just what you got to do to beat Nebraska. I'm going to give me and Scott, we're going to give our predictions, but I got to give my weather report again. I thought I was a little more spot on. It looked a little cloudy there, more cloudy than I expected.
Honestly, felt a couple raindrops pregame, like just a couple, but thank God it cleared up and there was nothing to report about in terms of
it's hard to do the weather. Hard to do the weather about 5 days in advance, but we're
right.
going to try again. So this is everything that we need to know about the game going into the game. So the spread favors Nebraska by a touchdown, 7 points. ESPN's matchup predictor gives Nebraska a 60.3% chance of winning the game, which feels like a lot. Giving Colorado a 39.7% chance. Nebraska's last 5 games, UTEP was their first win in their last 5. Colorado, North Dakota State, first win in their last 5. So they come in on an even playing field there. It's going to be on NBC. 84 degrees and sunny is what I'm being told here. Ooh. So we'll see. And then obviously Nebraska's stadium holds around 100,000 people and it is expected to be a full capacity type of game. So Scott, prediction for the game, close win, close loss, blowout win. What are we thinking here?
I'm thinking a close win for Colorado. Obviously Nebraska, as you mentioned, is about 7.5 point favorite, depending on where you're getting your odds. And I get that, with them being the home team, with them being a team that's, talked about at least nationally as somebody who, can compete, in the Big Ten, kind of, in that second tier behind, the big dogs.
Behind USC. Notable Big Ten power.
yeah. I guess USC you could throw in there now. They looked really good last night. But, I just like Colorado in a close win again. With Shedeur Sanders being experienced, as he is, as opposed to Dylan Raiola making his second career college football start. That's kind of where this conversation starts and ends to me. Obviously, Nebraska was awesome defensively last year, top 11, I believe, in total defense is what they finished the year at. And Shedeur and that offense looked pretty good in that game. So I would expect something similar, again, offensively here. But again, it's going to come down to how obviously the X factor is Dylan Raiola. What version of him are we going to get? Are we going to get the version that we saw in week 1 against a UTEP defense, or are we going to get, something else? And I think if we get something else, I think if he throws an interception, turns the ball over once or twice, I think that's all this Colorado offense is going to need. All the extra opportunity they're going to need to kind of blow this game open, and not necessarily blow it open, because I think, like I said, I think it's going to be a close game. I think Alejandro Mata perhaps might have to make a clutch kick or two in this game on the road, again, in a raucous environment. But I like Colorado to win a close one-score game.
Yeah, I'm around the same. The over-under is at 57.5. I think it'll probably be I think I'm going to go, if I had to put a prediction on it, like 35-28. I think it'll be really close. I think they're going to trade touchdowns. And at the end of the day, for me, it comes down to which quarterback do I trust more. And I trust Shedeur Sanders a lot more than a one-game experienced Dylan Raiola. Now, if this game was like 3 years from now and we're looking at year 3 Dylan Raiola, who knows?
Even next year, even the year 2 Dylan Raiola versus whoever Colorado's going to have a quarterback picture, I would probably give Raiola the edge. But in this particular matchup, I mean, Shedeur Sanders just showed us too much to give, again, a freshman quarterback making his second start the edge. I mean, football comes down to more than the quarterback, but as a former college quarterback myself, that's how I like to think about the game, and that's how the game oftentimes gets decided by the guy under center, the guy, with the ball in his hand every damn play. So that's how I'm looking at this matchup. Again, other guys are going to have to step up. The defense is going to have to play a more complete game. This Colorado defense, that is. And it's not going to be easy to pull this off on the road. Again, you're 7.5 point underdog in this one for a reason. But again, I think the leadership of Shedeur, the playmaking of Travis, some of those other receivers, I think he's going to give the Bucs the edge.
Yeah, I think you broke it down perfectly. It's quarterback versus quarterback in most scenarios, in the sense of like, which one do you trust more? And Shedeur Sanders doesn't make mistakes. Dylan Raiola hasn't made a mistake yet, but it was also a much different team. And so I think this game is going to be really interesting. I know a lot of people are going to be tuned in. NBC on a Saturday. It feels big. Prime time as it gets. So we both have the Buffs starting off 2-0. It's going to be a great game. Scott, tell the people what you're working on, where they can find you, Scott's here every Tuesday with us as we dive into what went right or wrong, and then what we dive into the future as well. So tell people what you're working on in your personal life over there.
Absolutely, man. Go ahead and follow me on follow me on this Twitter if you don't already, right here at this handle. And go follow my work at coloradoink.com. I'll be at tomorrow's press conference. Coach Prime and some players will be talking to us here at the local media. And then the following day, we'll be hearing from wide receivers coach Jason Phillips, Jimmy Horn Jr. following his 198-yard performance. So stay tuned on, both those days of press conferences, the latest on that. And obviously, I'll have you locked in all week, all season on Buffs football. And I'll be in Lincoln, this weekend for the Colorado-Nebraska game as well. So stay tuned.
Yeah, make sure to stay tuned. Scott's got all the coverage. We got all the coverage over here on Locked On Buffs. There's a lot of coverage, and we got it all. So make sure to tune in, like, subscribe, and follow. We will see you guys tomorrow. Everyone have a great day.